Good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's an historic day for the United States and its economic policy. For the first time ever, a woman, Brooklyn-born economist Janet Yellen, is poised to be sworn in as the nation's top banker. Early this evening, the Senate voted to confirm the 67-year-old Yellen as the chair of the Federal Reserve. She's now its vice chair. Eamon Javers joins us live now from the nation's capital with more on tonight's vote and what it means for interest rates, the Fed's stimulus plan, and the American economy. Eamon, welcome. Let's start with the details. How close was the vote?
In the end, Tyler, she had more votes than she needed. The final vote was 56-26, and you may notice that that does not add up to 100 senators. We had a lot of missing senators today because of some of those travel glitches around the country. Senators were not able to make it back to Washington in time for this vote tonight, but 56-26 was the final margin. In the end, she got fewer no votes than Ben Bernanke, who had 30 no votes back in 2010. So that would indicate a little bit more support, but it's a little bit skewed by the weather and the travel. So it's hard to say exactly how popular the Fed is and exactly how popular Janet Yellen is in the United States Senate right now.
You know, there were all day long, everybody was wondering whether this vote was going to go through or not, because as you mentioned about the weather. Any other surprises, any other color that you can fill in on this historic vote?
Well, one of the interesting things here is that we had a number of Republicans vote for her, but we're going to have to take a look and break this down. One of the stats that I'm going to be curious to see here is whether or not we saw the majority of the Republican Party vote against her. I think that would be a first if we saw the majority of a political party voting against a chair nominee for the Federal Reserve. And then obviously there's the historic nature of tonight's vote. Already there are some people speculating that Janet Yellen, with this vote, has just become the most powerful woman in the entire world.
You know, Eamon, there were some worries way back when Ms. Yellen was first nominated by the president that certain senators, notably Rand Paul of Kentucky, might put a so-called hold on her nomination. Those fears, if that's the right word for it, were not realized. Why?
Well, I think part of it is that they were able to go with the nuclear option in the United States Senate, so they were able to lower the threshold of votes that she needed to just 50 votes in the Senate. So that helped ease things along. And then I think it's a political calculation on the part of some of those senators who said, you know what, do I really want to be known for this, or do I want to hang around here and fight on a different issue on a different day? In the end, Rand Paul didn't go to the United States Senate floor to speak about this until after the vote had already concluded. All
right. Thanks a lot, Eamon. Eamon Javers reporting from Washington. Well, our next guest says that Janet Yellen's biggest challenge will be how to unwind the Fed stimulus without derailing economic growth. He's Nariman Behravesh, chief economist at IHS. Nariman, thanks for joining us. Tell us what Janet Yellen should or shouldn't do so that she's successful in unwinding this stimulus out of the economy.
Well, I think first and foremost, what she provides is some continuity in terms of what the Fed is doing. But very importantly, I think the key goal here is flexibility in terms of gauging where the economy is, gauging how much to proceed with this tapering of the bond purchases, and do it in a way that obviously gets rid of that program, let's say by the end of this year, without derailing the economy. I mean, that's the key challenge, I think, over the next year. So flexibility is key, making sure the economy is on track, not doing things too soon, not doing things too late. So it's a bit of a balancing act.
How, if at all, do you expect her tenure to be different from Chairman Bernanke's?
It's really not going to be that different. Again, what we're going to get, as historic as this vote is, we're going to get continuity. She's been in the Fed system quite some time now, first as president of the San Francisco Fed, then, as you said earlier, the vice chair of the Federal Reserve. So what we get is continuity. And we'll get very similar policies, I suspect. There'll be some nuances, some subtle differences, but in broad strokes, it's going to be very similar because she, by and large, has supported what Bernanke did.
You know, Nariman, you were talking about economic growth, and one thing that we hear from so many economists as well as Fed policymakers is that what's happened to business investment? When are businesses going to start spending and hiring and expanding? Do you think that now with Janet Yellen in charge and starting this tapering process that we're going to see businesses step up?
Well, that's certainly the hope. I mean, one of the biggest drags and biggest impediments, if you will, to business investment, businesses taking big risks, if you will, is uncertainty. Uncertainty about monetary policy in this case, uncertainty about fiscal policy. There's huge uncertainty about fiscal policy. in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think with Yellen being in office and that continuity being more or less assured, I think that source of uncertainty is diminished. And hopefully, on the congressional side, this agreement that they came up with on spending means at least the government shutdown's off the table for a while. So good news is I think that the level of policy uncertainty is coming down a little bit. That should help investment.
All right, so Nariman, tomorrow morning your phone rings. It's Janet Yellen on the other end of the line. She says, Nariman, what should I do? How quickly should I begin tapering these bond purchases that have stimulated the economy? What do you tell her?
Well, it should be data-driven. If the economy is coming along like gangbusters, if it's strong, they should accelerate that process. If it's, if there's any kind of faltering, they should slow it down. They shouldn't be tied to a specific formula. They should just be very flexible here.
All right, so she does listen to you. By the end of this year, where should the unemployment rate be, and how fast will the economy be growing?
Well, I think our view is they will taper, but we do think that the unemployment rate will be down in the low 6s by the end of this year, and the economy will probably be growing between 3 and 3.5%.
All right, we'll leave it there. Nariman, thanks so much for coming on the program. Nariman Behrovesh, she's chief economist at IHS Global Insight.